If you've been scrolling through endless spec sheets, watching YouTube unbox videos, and still can't picture how a 32-channel digital mixer actually fits into your live sound or studio workflow, you're not alone. The decision feels especially risky when the price tag jumps into the four-figure range and you worry about ending up with a rack that looks impressive on paper but turns out to be a nightmare to program on the road. That's why today's deep dive is all about cutting through the hype and showing you exactly where the Mackie DL32S lands in real-world use. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the thing that most people notice about the DL32S is the built-in Wi-Fi that lets you control every channel from an iPad or Android tablet. In practice, that means you can walk around a gig venue, listen to the mix from the stage, and tweak a channel without ever having to crawl behind a rack. I've seen a house band set up a small PA in a coffee shop, place the tablet on a nearby table, and balance vocals and acoustic guitars in seconds. No need for a separate control surface. That wireless freedom is the core value proposition, especially if you're a touring musician or a church tech who has to juggle multiple rooms. But wireless control is only as good as the underlying channel processing. Mackie equips the DL32S with 32 Onyx plus mic preamps that are fully recallable, which is a big win for anyone who runs the same show night after night. Imagine a theater production that needs the same mic layout for each performance. You can dial in the exact gain, 31-band EQ, compression, and limiter settings for every channel, hit save, and recall the whole console with a single tap. The parametric EQ is flexible enough to tame a harsh saxophone or bring out the subtle nuance of a cello, while the compressor/limiter on each channel keeps vocalists from disappearing into the mix when they belt a high note. Now, let's talk about the 3232 USB interface. This isn't just a stereo output, it's a full multi-track recording engine. You can plug a laptop into the rack and capture each input on its own track, which is a game-changer for live recording engineers who want to do post-show mixes without pulling out a separate multi-track recorder. The virtual soundcheck feature leverages this. You record a rehearsal, then play it back through the same DSP chain you used on stage, letting you hear exactly how the audience will hear it and make adjustments before the actual show. That workflow eliminates the guesswork that usually comes with traditional sound checks. The DL32S also ships with Mackie's Musician Collection, a suite of 23 plugins ranging from reverbs to guitar amp simulations. While these aren't replacements for high-end outboard gear, they provide a handy palette for small venues that don't have dedicated effect racks. I've seen a worship team use the built-in reverb to add depth to a choir without having to lug a separate processor, and the results sounded polished enough for a live stream audience. All that said, the DL32S isn't a perfect fit for every situation. The reliance on Wi-Fi, while convenient, introduces a hidden trade-off. You need a stable network environment. In venues with congested Wi-Fi or older routers, you might experience occasional latency or dropped connections when adjusting parameters. I've heard users recommend setting up a dedicated 2.4 GHz router solely for the mixer to avoid interference from phones and laptops on the same band. If you're used to hardwired consoles where a single cable guarantees control, that extra network step can feel like an unnecessary hurdle. Another practical limitation is the lack of traditional analog outputs beyond the 10 fully assignable XLRs. For a large touring rig that needs multiple monitor mixes, you'll have to rely on external stage boxes or splitters to expand the output count. That adds cost and complexity, so if you run more than 10 speakers or need separate monitor feeds for each musician, you should factor in that extra gear budget. The touchscreen control app is well designed, but it does have a learning curve. New users often spend the first half hour just navigating menus, and because the app mirrors the rack's signal flow, you can't cheat by just turning a knob. You have to understand routing, busing, and grouping. For a seasoned engineer who already works with digital consoles, that's fine. For a small venue tech who primarily uses analog mixers, the transition could be steep. Who should consider buying the Mackie DL32S? If you are a house band, theater crew, or church tech that runs the same shows repeatedly and values the ability to recall an entire mix with a single button, the DL32S offers a solid solution. Its multi-track USB recording is a real advantage for anyone who wants to capture live performances without adding a separate recorder. The wireless control shines in environments where the engineer needs to move around the room. Think festivals, outdoor stages, or classrooms where you're teaching mixing techniques on the fly. Who should skip it? If you run a large touring act that requires dozens of monitors,